Hi, my presentation is over reading comprehension, and my name is Maas. I'm a graduate student at Morningside College, and I am currently a teacher at a middle school in Southeast Iowa. The name of my paper is Effects of Reading Strategies on 7th Grade General Education Reading Proficiency. My statement of the problem is that low reading comprehension skills have a huge impact on students. It doesn't just affect them in literacy, it affects them in all of their curricular areas such as science, social studies, and math. When looking at statistics, the United States scores below other countries on most national assessments, such as the National Assessment of Educational Progress, the Progress in International Reading for Literacy Study, and the Program for International Student Assessment. The reason that I wanted to look into this problem was because as a teacher, you see firsthand how low reading comprehension skills can affect a student. I have taught science and I have also taught literacy. So I have seen in both subject areas how that is a problem, not only in literacy, and being able to find and research interventions that could help to actually increase a student's reading comprehension skills so that they are not struggling in those curricular areas. My literature review framework. So the past research in GAP, studies over the years show that reading comprehension influence students' reading proficiency and their ability to read. Interventions that have been completed by studies in the past use students who already struggle with reading. They are ELL students or students who come from another country whose first language is not English, or they use students who have a diagnosed learning disability. Also, reading comprehension strategies should be taught to all students, not just those three categories of students. Strategies that these different studies have used to show an increase in comprehension were whole group interventions and the intervention of fluency, which were not actually helping increase students' reading comprehension. The problem is there's been a considerable focus in school districts on making sure that students are considered a proficient reader by the third grade. However, statistics have shown that the strategies that school districts are using are not working, such as fluency, which is not focusing on reading comprehension. It focuses on how fast a student can read and how proficient they are at reading, but it does not actually work on those comprehension skills. So the theory that I looked at for my project was the schema theory. Everybody has schema and they are considered the building blocks in our brains. The process of comprehension uses these building blocks or schema for us to be able to process new information. Everybody has this, and when we learn new information, the schema in our brains processes that new information. As a student learns new information, they build that schema and they make connections to prior knowledge and experiences while also using critical thinking skills. When students take those connections and build upon the prior knowledge that they already have about a subject area, that is when they are learning, that is when they are processing information, organizing it, and storing it in their brain. That is being able to comprehend something, and they will be more likely to understand it. In my own intervention, we used a graphic organizer and we did use a story map. It gives students the ability to understand and process information that is being taught to them. Also, when students partner read and summarize, which we also used in my intervention, students use that schema and they actually build upon it because they are making connections and using those building blocks to connect to their prior knowledge and connect that to what they are already learning. My purpose statement. So my research question is, what is the effect of partner reading, summarizing, and semantic maps or graphic organizers on reading proficiency among 7th grade general education students? My purpose statement was, the purpose of this experimental study was to determine whether 7th grade general education student proficiency scores would improve as a result of using the interventions of partner reading, summarizing, and semantic maps. My hypothesis was that I predicted that students in my experimental group would have higher A reading scores than students in the control group. So my impact to the field of study was being able to provide students with reading comprehension strategies, such as partner reading, summarizing, and using a semantic map or graphic organizer to increase the reading comprehension, because many studies in the past that focus on reading comprehension have been completed with participants who are ELL students or already have a diagnosed learning disability. So this would be one of the studies that was completed using general education students. Impact to my work as a practitioner was simply to find out if students who use these different interventions would outperform students who did not receive these interventions, which would mean there was an increase in their comprehension. So I use an experimental design because the effect of my independent variables were used to research the effect on my dependent variable, which was reading comprehension. This design allowed me to have a control group and an experimental group, and also test for comprehension before my intervention started and then after I had completed my intervention. So my participants were 2 7th grade general education classes. There were 22 students in my experimental group, 20 students in the control group, so a total of 42 students in the study. My demographics were overall 55% female, 45% male, 48% Caucasian, 33% Hispanic, 14% Pacific Islander, and 0.05% were Black. Experimental group demographics, 59% were females, 41% males. I had 2 participants with IEPs who shared an associate. The control group demographics, there were 50% females and 50% males. 3 participants with IEPs, 2 of which do not have associates. The materials for my intervention, so students needed their computers or their Chromebooks, books for each student. Each partnership or group had a folder that consisted of pencils for each participant, their graphic organizer, and their books. Each student had a graphic organizer or a map, and then my measurement, which was a reading test, which is a computerized test. My procedure was partner reading, paragraph shrinking with the use of a semantic map and graphic organizer. So with my intervention, after students took the A reading test in the fall, I put my students in a list from the highest to the lowest, and then I cut that list in half. And then to assign groups, I took the top half of my list and I put the highest with the lowest, and then the second with the second lowest, and so on. And then I did that with the second half of my list. That way, my highest reader wasn't with my lowest reader in the class. It would have been my highest reader was with a middle reader in the class. So once everybody had their partner, so partner 1 was always the highest reader. So in the intervention, partner 1 would read for 5 minutes while partner 2 would follow along, make corrections as they were reading if necessary. Then after partner 1 was done reading for 5 minutes, students would flip back in their book to where partner 1 began reading, and partner 2 would start reading right there as well. So they would be rereading what partner 1 read. Then partner 2 would read that same text that partner 1 read for 5 minutes, while partner 1 would support them with that error correction. Partner 2 then would complete an oral retell for 1 minute about what had been read by themselves and by partner 1. Then for the last 10 minutes of the intervention, students would paragraph shrink, which means students would take turns reading paragraphs back and forth. And after each student finished reading their paragraph, they had to summarize that paragraph in 10 words or less. I encourage students to use their fingers when they were summarizing to make sure that they were using 10 words or less. Even if they had 11 words, they would have to restart their summarizing of their paragraph. After that intervention was complete, students would complete their graphic organizer for story elements, which looked like this. It had a setting, characters, the problem, important events, the outcome, and the theme. So independent samples, t-tests, were used to compare the average scores of both my experimental group and my control group from the fall A reading to winter A reading scores. So the beginning and end of my study. My data was analyzed by the A reading test, and it is considered a reliable and a valid measure. The A reading test is a 30-question online computer administered test. It is for each student, and when each student gets done, it automatically gives that student a score, and that is a score that shows me if they are considered low risk, proficient, college pathway, or high risk. Results from my independent sample t-test indicated that my intervention showed no statistically significant difference, so my hypothesis was not supported. Here is my table. So when you look at the p-values in the fall, 0.482 shows that my group started out very similarly. My p-value in the winter was 0.220, which again shows no statistically significant difference. Both of these scores are greater than that 0.05, which means that my interventions were not effective. Here is my figure 1. So this has my standard deviations and my means. So my means in the fall for my experimental group, 527.5 with a standard deviation of 23.34. Control group, mean 522.3, standard deviation of 23.96. So they started out very similar. In the winter, my experimental group did outperform my control group. However, still had big standard deviations, which means that my data is less consistent. A connection to past research and theory. Findings from my study did not match results from past studies. These are 3 studies that I talked about in my paper that got positive results. However, even though my experimental group did get higher scores, it was not significantly significant or statistically significant. So my theoretical framework supported this study because my participants were asked to partner read, summarize, use a graphic organizer, which requires them to process information, which is what the schema theory suggests enables students to be more successful because they're activating that prior knowledge. So I expected to get positive results for my study because it did support building schema, enabling students to activate their prior knowledge. However, this did not occur. My implications, so there's students, parents, teachers, and administration. Students need to put forth effort in participating. Parents need to support their students at home and encourage them to continue to read. They could also continue the intervention at home. Teachers finding and utilizing interventions to increase their comprehension, and administrators looking for long-term solutions for reading comprehension. There's 4 limitations, students' absences, so I recommend actually doing groups of 3. I only use 7th grade students. I'm recommending using grades 6 through 8 for a more variety, having a larger sample size of 30 students per group and a longer study length, so doubling the length of the study. And here are my references.